everyone. Welcome back to Interview with Scientists series, episode 16. Today we have Evguenia, the founder of Travel Scientist, a science communication platform. She completed her PhD in 2014 and is currently working remotely as a science communicator, career coach, and science communication teacher. Today we will talk with Evguenia about science writing, her Antarctica experience, and science communication. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Jemaya. Thanks a lot for having me and for inviting me. I've been following the Addictive Brain for a long time, and it's a huge honor for me to be here.
It's a pleasure talking to you as well. Thank you. So let's start with your PhD. Can you tell us a little bit about your PhD?
I don't remember anymore. I did my PhD in biochemistry in Argentina. So I did all my studies, like the undergraduate and graduate studies in Argentina.
Yeah.
And I completed my PhD in biochemistry. My topic was human genetics.
Yes.
And I was studying the molecular basis, like genetic basis of male infertility and related to the ethnicity of the population. It sounds like a huge thing, but for me, it was like a very, very small and tiny piece of the puzzle.
Yes.
And although kind of like I loved science when I was doing my research and my PhD, but after my PhD, I realized that academia and doing research for the rest of my life was not for me. So I was lucky enough to find another career path.
Okay. And I see that you moved to writing shortly after your PhD. So when did you decide that writing is your passion?
Well, it was not an easy road, to be honest. So I briefly transitioned into industry after my PhD because I knew that I didn't want to do research anymore, but I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I went to the industry, to the bench. And after that, I realized that was also not for me. So that, like, at that point of my life, I had kind of like a crisis because I was like, okay, like academia is not for me, industry is not for me. So what is for me, actually? And I started being coached by someone who was like a psychotherapist, but also a career coach.
Yeah.
And he helped me understand what was it about science that I actually loved.
Okay.
Because it was really hard for me to like just leave science, right?
Yes.
And I realized that I was always super passionate about like communicating science, like I enjoyed the literature research, doing like the writing and prepare slide decks and poster presentations, and I was always helping my colleagues prepare their presentations for conferences. I was reviewing their papers, and I was like, I really enjoyed that part. So I was like, maybe that's my path.
Yes.
And luckily it was.
It was. So how difficult was the road from the bench to becoming a science communicator, a medical writer?
Well, the hardest part was realizing, like the one that I just told you, like actually knowing what I wanted to do. But after that, kind of like the second challenging part came. That is, so first I had no experience in doing any types of, like I had no experience from academia, right? But it's not what like the experience that you need to work as a science communicator, or what is also like called, you can call it like science communication or also medical writing. It's kind of like they're similar terms. And so it was like first I had to gain the experience, and I started freelancing. I first started as a scientific editor. And I was editing mainly scientific manuscripts, like publications for international journals. And then kind of like I slowly transitioned, but also because like I had the opportunity to edit other types of content. Like I was editing more articles for a lay audience, and I was working on topics that were more related to my personal interests. So that was really interesting for me. And from that experience, I actually learned that first, I enjoy more communicating to a lay audience, like this kind of like challenging thing of like how you explain something very scientific and complex to, I don't know, like your grandma or like a 5-year-old, right?
Yeah.
That was like a nice challenge for me. And then slowly I also transitioned from editing content written by other people to writing content myself.
Okay.
And that took me some time. It was not easy, you know, like it took me at least 8 months to a year to actually like first like land my first full-time job as a science communicator. So it requires some experience and patience and lots of networking outside of academia.
Yeah. Definitely. Networking is really important, and all my speakers have emphasized how important is networking. So, thank you. So I would just like to ask you one more question about communication. Like I have been asked a lot of people have asked me like, how do I do this? How do I enter a position as a science communicator? So what are your top advices for people who want to transition into science communication or writing?
Yeah, well, there are like many nuances to it. So there are like basically two main paths. So like the one that I took was starting from freelancing and then like gaining the experience and then trying to land a full-time job.
Okay.
Other people, they do it in a different way. They start networking and they start applying for jobs and they land a job and then they learn on the job, because most of the science communication like agencies, medical writing agencies, they actually like to teach their like the people like in an entry-level position. They like to teach them like a specific way that they want it to be done.
Yes.
So some people, they gain that experience by freelancing, and some people they gain that experience maybe like with an entry-level position or like an internship, right?
Yes.
This kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like I think like my main advice for anyone who wants to go into communications is like first learn what is out there. So like what are the different types of medical writing, science communication, and what is actually your personal interest.
Okay.
And when you have that piece of information, it's basically like just start writing. Start doing whatever you think you might be passionate about. Just start doing that, and then you will learn if that's something for you, and then you will be able to showcase it to others, right? Like create a portfolio, you know, like publish things and like maybe like as a guest author or something like that. And that will give you like a better idea of what you can do professionally.
Thank you. So to follow up this question, like how do people translate this into the CV? Where do these things can go on the CV?
Well, that's an amazing question. And I will start by saying that actually, like outside of academia, we don't actually use a CV. We use a resume. And there is a big difference between an academic CV and a resume. Like academic CV is basically everything that you've done kind of like in a detailed way, right? It's kind of like a statement. And a resume that you will use in industry, any type of industry, and science communication is one of them, is something that you want to show in your resume where you want to go. It's kind of like, okay, so I'm now in academia. I want to transition into science communication. So how can I leverage my experience from academia and show it in my resume, right? And one of the like basic things is kind of like a CV can have like 10 pages or more, right? An academic CV. But a resume will not have more than 2 pages. And it has to be very like digested information, kind of like not only what you did, but how what you did applies to the job that you want to get. Right? So if you want to do communication, right, you will not include in your resume something like, okay, I can do a PCR or like electron microscopy or like a cell culture, right? Because they're not interested in that. And you actually, and also like it's very important to remember that many times the person, like the hiring manager or the recruiter, they are not scientists, so they don't understand what it means to publish a paper in a highly reputed journal, or they don't know what is an impact factor. They don't care about impact factors, right? Not even like, and this is something I think that's kind of like a misunderstanding about working in science communications. You don't need to have like a very like strong and long record of publications in academia, because maybe you haven't published many papers in high impact journals or something like that when you were doing your PhD. But then like you can be a great communicator, maybe writing for a different audience, like for a lay audience, for example. So these are kind of like some misconceptions that we have, and sometimes we are also afraid to transition into this kind of roles because we don't really know what they're about.
So let's talk about the leadership program where you are part of, the Homebound Leadership Program. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'll go a little bit before that, and I will tell you like how I got to know about and learn that this program existed. So when I transitioned from academia to science communications, I joined an association that is called the Cheeky Scientists Association. And the Cheeky Scientists Association helps PhDs transition from academia to industry. And when I joined, there was an amazing young woman, scientist, Kathy, and she was the COO at that time of Cheeky Scientists. And she gave me lots of advice that helped me kind of like transition and have a successful career in outside of academia. But apart from that, at one point she joined this program. So when I joined Homebound, I joined the 4th cohort of women of this leadership program, and she was the 2nd one. So when she joined and she went to Antarctica, that we will talk about that in just a couple of minutes. I was super curious about it. So we had a call, and it was like, oh wow, like I love your experience, you know, like and all the leadership and the women in STEM, you know, like, and all the learnings from that experience. And when I was talking to her, I said this out loud, kind of like, you know, like, oh, I wish I could do that as well, right? And she was like, well, you can. And then I had like my imposter syndrome appeared, and it was like, well, no, right? Like I because this is a leadership program for based on mitigating and kind of like creating awareness about climate change. And I'm a biochemist. I always worked with like the human body. Like there's like I was never working in something related to environment. And I was like from Argentina, and I was doing science communications. I was not even doing research anymore. So I had all these doubts and all this imposter syndrome thoughts that was not for me, that I will not be chosen for this program. And she actually told me that, well, first I had nothing to lose, right? I had to apply. And then she said, like, actually they are looking for diversity. They are looking for people from other countries because the program is based in Australia. Like it started in Australia. So there are like a lot of women from Australia participating in the program. But they don't have a lot of representation from like Latin American countries. And like science communication is a very strong part of the program as well. So that was also a plus. And then like, of course, I had to learn a lot about the environment and climate change that I didn't know at that time. But yeah, it was like an amazing experience. So this program, and I really want to, like, if there are like women in science listening to this right now, I really want to encourage them to look into this program and maybe thinking of applying, because this is a leadership program for women in STEM. And STEM including science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medicine, right? Any of those fields from different countries in the world, from different stages in their career, who are actually, they care about the environment and they care about the future of our planet. And the learnings from that experience are just amazing. Like every cohort, it consists of about between 70 and 100 women every year, with the goal of creating a network of 1,000 women in STEM over the period of 10 years, who will be able to be leaders to create a better future for us as a human species in this planet, right? And it's just like, it's just amazing and mind-blowing.
Amazing. No, that's an amazing program. So yeah, the people who will watch the recording, Women in Science, you should definitely take this opportunity. So how was the Antarctica experience?
It was amazing. It was amazing. I never expected, or I never even wished to go to Antarctica. And the whole experience, like going to Antarctica, seeing this absolutely like wild, untouched, virgin place on Earth.
Yeah.
That is, there are like just a couple scientific bases there, but it's basically like, it's a desert. There's nothing there. There's like just snow and penguins and sea lions. And it's just like incredible.
Yeah.
And I think like the most important kind of like takeaway for me was that, and it was actually hard to kind of like process and take in, because when we were there, I realized how much damage we are doing to our planet in the places where we live.
Yes.
Because like when you go to Antarctica, you don't want to disturb nature, right? And you are very careful with nature. But when we go back home, we are not. Like we throw things away, we use plastic, like we contaminate, like we pollute the air, we I don't know, like we just mess with nature and everything. And when you're there, you actually realize that a different way of living is possible.
Yes.
And that's so powerful, right? So that was a huge part of it, just like seeing it with my own eyes. And the other huge part of the experience was the women. Like getting to know other 99 female scientists with amazing career trajectories who were like, they were like PIs and CEOs of like amazing companies. They struggled with like finding their place in academia, finding their place in industry, finding their place in leadership. And even like, because whether you like it or not, science is kind of like a male dominated area, right? It has been like that for many years. And for women, it's really hard to kind of like fight for our place in science. So the struggles that these women overcame are just mind-blowing, like in different, and most of them, they're also like mothers and wives, and like they also have like other lives besides their work. And even like the ages, right? Like the youngest one was 19 and the oldest one was 80 something years old. So it's just
we saw a lot of diversity there.
A lot of diversity. Yeah, we had this a big part of the program when, like, while we were in Antarctica was we had this symposium at sea where each of the women had only 3 minutes to tell their story to the others, right? Because we were 100, so like only 3 minutes was more than enough. And like it was like so touching every time that each of them were talking, and we could all relate to different parts of their stories. And I think that was like the most, I don't know, like touching moment of the whole experience.
So what were the final goals, or what were the goals of this trip, and how long did you spend in Antarctica?
So we were there. So the whole program is a year-long program that starts online, and we have like activities and preparations and calls for like during a year before the voyage.
Yes.
And then the voyage itself is 3 weeks, where we like the most intensive part of the program and the teaching happens there.
Okay.
So starting from like, I don't know, like 7, 8 a.m. in the morning, and learning about strategy, about science communication, about visibility, about different parts of leadership.
Yes.
And then also like learning about the science, like the environmental science, the climate change. And it was like super intense. So probably the most intense 3 weeks in my whole life.
So I guess you enjoyed a lot and learned a lot from the program.
Yes, definitely. And we're still learning because like, as I said, like we were the 4th cohort out of 10 that they're aiming to reach by I think it's 2026.
Okay.
And we are still in touch with like the alumni from previous cohorts, and now we have 2 more cohorts after us that are struggling with, because they're not able to travel right now because of COVID restrictions.
Yes.
And we are still like, it's an ongoing learning process. Yeah, definitely.
Great. That was some amazing thoughts and journey. Thank you for sharing that with us. So my final questions to you are about careers in science. So as a career coach, what is one common mistake that you commonly see or in CVs from people who are trying to transition from academics to industry?
So I will give you 2 answers. One is, what is the common mistake that I see? And the other one is related specifically to CVs. And I think like the most common mistake is that people want to apply for jobs before even knowing what they want to do and what they're passionate about. And there is a long process before actually applying to a job that requires learning about the different positions, talking to people, having informational interviews, asking about the company culture, asking about a day in that job, like how it looks like, what it involves. So that is super important. And that's the first step, because a lot of people, they end up maybe like if they are successful enough, they land jobs that they don't enjoy and they are not passionate about. So that's the first most common mistake. And when it comes to CVs or to resumes, is actually having one single resume for every job that we apply to. So the first step is like creating a resume that will leverage your skills from academia and where you want to go, as I said earlier. And the second step is like every single time that you're applying for a position, you need to tailor your CV, like your resume, to that specific company and that specific position. Otherwise, it just doesn't work, because like they're looking for different things, and you have all those keywords are in the job ad. It's not like you don't have to guess. You just go to the job ad, you highlight the keywords, and then you use them to create your resume. So that's kind of like, it works perfectly every time.
Awesome. No, I have also seen those common mistakes on many platforms and people who share their resume. So I share the same thoughts like you. My final question to you is, what do you enjoy the most apart from your work?
Well, I do many things. I'm kind of like a dilettante, like I do like, I teach yoga, I teach acro yoga. I'm super passionate about like plants and natural medicine, and I do so many things. And I enjoy traveling. So imagine that this pandemic was kind of like hard for me. But one of the things that I enjoyed the most is teaching and helping people. That's kind of like, that's just so rewarding for me in any area of my life.
Those are really good hobbies, teaching and helping others.
Thank you.
We have one audience, so if you have any questions. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Oh, yeah. Okay. It's a thank you message. Thank you very much for joining us today, and it was a real pleasure to learn about your journey and sharing your experience with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and thanks for everything that you're doing. That is just like, it's amazing. I love following your other interviews and all the information that you share about science. And hopefully this interview will also help others, maybe inspire others.
Definitely.